All right, awesome. All right, we got a few more people joining as well. That's great. All right, looks like we got a full house. All right, wonderful. So we got a bunch of year ones, bunch of year twos. So this is perfect. All right, guys. So let's get started. My name is Sherjan Hosseini. I'm telling you guys a little bit about investment banking today and what it takes to break in. All of you probably have passion for working in some of these industries, and these industries can be challenging to say the least. Obviously it's hard to work in these industries, but it's very hard to even get a job in the world of investment banking. So Marcus and I got connected a while ago, and I'm excited. I have a part of my history has been in Hong Kong, so I'm very close to the city. I used to live in Hong Kong for the last 5 years, and then just recently moved back to Toronto. But just to give you guys an idea of my background and what I've done. And by the way, like Elva, Janice, Tingyu, Eric, and Philip, I'd love if you guys can turn your cameras on as well, and Queenie as well, just so we can make it more interactive. I don't want it to be as if like I'm just talking to some names, right? So I would love to see who are the people and kind of make it more interactive. So throughout this entire thing, I'd love for you guys to ask me questions, and we can have it a discussion versus that's why it's called mentor hour. So you get access to me, and we get to learn together. All right. Okay, so my background is, I used to work in investment banking at Morgan Stanley, and I was a vice president there in Hong Kong. Before that, I was at Google in their investment arm called Capital G. And prior to that, I was again at Morgan Stanley in San Francisco in their tech investment banking team. So I've been, I've worked in a couple of different places, from US to Canada to Hong Kong. And so I've learned a bunch of things. But at the same time, if I just stop there and I don't tell you anything else about my background, it would seem, oh my God, that's a pretty nice background. He's worked at some good places, and those are hard places to get into. So that definitely, makes sense. But what if I also told you something else? And what if I said, hey, look, I had a 3.0 GPA. I went to University of Toronto, just like you guys. So I didn't have a high GPA, but also went to a non-target school. And then I was an international student. I'm assuming some of you may be international students. And I didn't study finance or business. I studied engineering, right? So if you think about those things, it's hard to bridge the gap from those kind of backgrounds and those bottlenecks to the companies that I ended up working at. So, the whole reason for starting this workshop in this series and these courses that I teach is so students just like yourself, I can motivate a little bit, show you the things that I did right, but especially the things that I did wrong. So that then you can, apply that to your own story, to your own life, and hopefully, take it and get into the industries and companies that you want to work in. So that's the high level background in terms of like, what I've done. So today, in terms of the agenda, what I have is I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about my story and what I've done in terms of my journey of getting into investment banking, which is basically the main topic. Then I'll tell you guys a little bit more about what is investment banking, right? Because a lot of times you see investment banking as this hard to get into industry with a bunch of people wearing suits and they look really dangerous, but it's actually a lot simpler than that. So I'll give you guys a little bit of an idea of what that is. Then I'll tell you what does a day look like in the world of investment banking, right? So when you hopefully get a job in that industry, what is your day going to look like? And finally, I'll talk about a few tips I can give you in terms of, once you are here right now in the world of COVID and in a Zoom first world, it's going to be a little bit more challenging than normal. So just a reminder to Elva, Eric, Jasmine, Jet, and Oceana, can we please turn your cameras on so that we can all be interactive? You can keep your microphones mute, but just keep the cameras on so that way I can see you guys interacting as well. All right, so my story. Like I said, from Toronto, but originally ethnically I'm Pakistani. So I was born in Pakistan, immigrated to Canada, and then I was studying engineering at U of T. So I went to engineering sciences at U of T and studied aerospace engineering, and I sucked at it. I was not a good engineer at all. And it was something that, as you know, parents are always like, hey, choose something that's hard or tough. And that's something that you should do. So I ended up choosing it. But the truth is I shouldn't have chosen it because it was not the program for me. Long story short, I started doing that and started, doing some internships here and there, nothing special. Then I finally got an internship at Accenture. So Accenture, as some of you know, is a consulting company. So I worked there in 2008 summer. So when I worked in consulting at Accenture, as some of you know, consulting firms usually work with, they work with clients from all sorts of different industries. So the industry that I got assigned to was investment banking, right? So I worked with an investment banking firm in Toronto called TD, as you guys know, and that's where I did my summer. So when I did the summer there, I was really happy. I was really excited. I saw people, who were investment bankers. I wasn't working with them. I wasn't working at TD. I was working at Accenture, but those were the clients. So for me, I kind of was like, my mindset was like, I want to be just like these people, right? Like if these guys who are doing investment banking analyst internships and stuff looks pretty cool, I want to do the same thing. So I basically said, okay, you know what? After this internship, I'm going to try my best to get a job at like RBC Capital Markets or BMO or one of the banks in Canada. But long story short, by this time, my GPA was probably like a 2.8 or 2.9, which was not good, as you can imagine. So I would highly recommend against that. But then at the same time, Accenture didn't give me a return offer. So now imagine all the things that are happening, bad economy, which is something you guys will be facing as well as you go into, internships coming up. Also at the same time, low GPA and non-target background. So adding all of those things, it was close to impossible getting a job in one of the best and the hardest industries to get into. But anyways, point is, a lot of times you'll face that, hey, I don't have the background, I don't have the, the skills or the numbers or the resume for these industries, but that shouldn't stop you from improving and slowly inching forward. Because getting into these industries, when I say these industries, I mean some of the competitive industries, takes a long time. For some people, it can be quick, right? It can be overnight, but for a lot of people, it actually takes a long, long time. So one thing that is important for you to understand is just because you don't get into something today or next year or the year after, that doesn't mean you give up hope, right? So I started in my fourth year then after Accenture, didn't have a job coming up after graduation, wanted to do investment banking, couldn't figure out. So what I did was I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to keep on moving forward and I'll find another angle into this. So my angle into this was to do another degree because I didn't want to graduate and join some other company. I wanted to do investment banking. So to do that, I said, okay, you know what? I applied to a bunch of business schools. And the whole idea was, if I go to business school, I can network with a lot more people. And those people would then, teach me and give me the resources and get me into these firms. So networking is a big part that I want to teach you guys today and talk to you guys about. And a lot of students can be shy about networking, which is fine. But if you want to break into this industry or any of these industries, you have to network. You have to reach out. You have to cold email and stuff. So anyways, I applied to a bunch of business schools. The only one that accepted me was UCLA, and I got in. And when I got in, it was a one-year program. So in that one-year program, I said, you know what? I'm going to do everything that I can on a daily basis to reach out to everyone in the world of investment banking who has ever gone to UCLA. So this is the first lesson I want you guys to know. As you guys are currently at University of Toronto, right? University of Toronto has a lot of alumni who have broken into the world of investment banking, right? Obviously a lot in Canada, but there's definitely some in Toronto, in the US as well. Your goal should be to find out who they are, right? Through LinkedIn, through alumni directory, whatever source you can find. And you need to email them. You need to get connected with them. You need to bother them and say, hey, look, this is who I am. I'd love to be part of this thing. Sherman, welcome. Come, please, everybody, let's have your cameras on as well. Jasmine, another reminder for you. Let's have your camera on. Otherwise, it just looks like a dead screen. So basically, so with UCLA, I made a goal of mine. Every week, I would email 10 people and try to get them on a phone call, try to get them to speak with me and teach me and do all that stuff. So now, when I got to UCLA, I did that for a while. Then what happened was I was like, okay, I need to get interviews for the summer internship, right? And getting interviews for summer internship is hard, as you guys know. But again, I got my interviews through purely cold emailing and reaching out to people versus waiting for official campus recruiting and those kind of events, right? But anyways, what happened was in the summer, because I was a non-target, I was kind of a weird candidate because I wasn't an undergrad, I was a grad student, but I was applying for undergraduate roles. I didn't get a lot of interviews, especially the interviews that I really wanted. So as you know about investment banks, some of the best investment banks are like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, those kind of firms. They didn't even give me an interview, right? So, but when that happens, you're not going to just quit and say, you know what, I'm not going to get in this industry. You have to find another way. And the best thing I can tell you in getting into these industries is that a lot of the people will not get will not get a shot at the top firms the first time around. So if you guys want to work at RBC Capital Markets or Goldman Sachs, or Morgan Stanley, most likely you won't even get an interview the first time around. But that doesn't mean you stop pursuing investment banking. What you got to do is you got to keep on going one layer down, one degree down, and trying different layers of investment banks, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, until you get in. The most important thing is to push until you at least get inside the ballpark. And then you can always move your way and work your way up the food chain to the bank that you really want to work at. So my summer internship at UCLA ended up at this small, super small boutique bank. And I kid you not, it was literally like two guys and a chair, right? It was not even like a brand, and it was unpaid. So they didn't even pay me. So based on that, I actually, got this job, and I was like, you know what? It's a step in the right direction. It's not Goldman Sachs, it's not Morgan Stanley, but at least it is some sort of finance. So in your situation, especially from what I see in the survey and stuff, you guys are, year 2 or year 1, get a job in the industry as close as possible to the ultimate industry you want to get into. So anyways, I finished that internship in the summer, and now only have 1 semester left before I can before I have to actually start working full time. And if I don't get that job, I'm not going to be able to go do a third degree, right? This is kind of my last chance. So in September of 2010, when I was at UCLA, I realized that, the competition that I had around UCLA in terms of other candidates that I was competing with, it was too strong. So imagine if you're a UCLA student, you're competing with students from Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley, Wharton, all the best schools. So if I'm Goldman Sachs, I'm going to hire the kid from Harvard or Stanford before I even talk to the guy from UCLA, right? It's just how it is. So in those situations, it was kind of like, I was like, okay, you know what? My brand is not the strongest in LA. So what I did was I said, you know what? I'm going to come back to Toronto, and for 1 week, I'll recruit in Toronto. So this is the other lesson for you guys is, for example, you guys are from Hong Kong. A lot of you may have roots in Hong Kong or have some connection to Hong Kong. If you think your brand is stronger in Hong Kong and you can get a better job in Hong Kong, at least an offer, then go recruit in Hong Kong first. So the way I came back to Toronto, and I realized that, hey, my resume with the UCLA brand would be stronger compared to any student from University of Toronto, Queens, Ryerson, Schulich, York, all of these Canadian schools. When a recruiter looks at, from RBC, let's just say, looks at my resume and compares it with a resume from University of Toronto, and they will definitely give the UCLA person slightly higher ranking. So the lesson there is you got to really understand where your brand is strongest. Now, it doesn't mean you have to take that offer, right? It actually means just, engage with them, get them to at least give you an offer, right? Or give you an interview. So that's what I did. And out of the 5 banks that I got interviews from, I got an offer from Bank of Montreal in investment banking, right? Now, I didn't take the offer. I was really grateful for them, but I took that offer to LA, and I told the investment banks in LA, hey, look, I have an offer from a competitor bank, which you guys would respect and compete with. So at least give me a shot at an interview. So that's when Houlihan Lokey, which is one of the boutique investment banks in Los Angeles, gave me a shot at an interview. So when I got that interview, I knew I was better prepared. I knew how to answer questions perfectly. I had better skills in terms of answering, structuring questions and all that stuff. So I did that. And that's when Houlihan Lokey gave me my offer, right? So again, I started Bank of Montreal as an offer, took that offer to LA, told Houlihan Lokey about my offer. They gave me an interview, and that interview resulted in an offer that I actually signed. And then I started working in investment banking in the US. Now, let me pause there and mention, this doesn't mean that I want to stay at Houlihan Lokey forever. It's a great firm. I have nothing against it. But my goal is I want to be at the best firm, right? I mean, everybody wants to be at the best of the best. So how do you get to that? This is just a journey. It's just another milestone in the journey. So I basically said, okay, you know what? This is great. I'm grateful for having this opportunity. Thousands of other students are not going to have this. I have it, but I'm not going to be satisfied. I'm going to keep on pushing, keep on networking, and keep on trying my best to see if I can get something better, right? So this is when I went back to my core skill, which is networking and how I network. I reached out to, again, a bunch of alumni from UCLA, again, kept on doing it while I had a job, right, at Houlihan Lokey. And I said, hey, I want to break into your bank. You guys are a bulge bracket, large form bank, and I'm working currently at Houlihan. Would love to connect. And this is where a managing director from New York reached back to me when I shot him a cold email, and he said, "I like your resume. Let's get you an interview." Right now, this was at Morgan Stanley. So I was trying to get a job at Morgan Stanley in New York, and he said, "Look, we're not hiring, but I'd love to chat with you." But he instead forced my resume to go actually to San Francisco. So luck would have it, the top investment banking group in the US or in the world is called Morgan Stanley Tech. It's in Menlo Park, which is near Stanford. And it does all the tech investment banking deals. And they basically got my resume and they gave me a shot at an interview. Now, everybody in this group, by the way, is either from Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley, or Wharton, generally speaking, right? So those are the 4 schools this group hires from. So there's no way they're going to hire someone from University of Toronto with a bad GPA and all the other stuff. But point is, it's a step in the right direction. So anyways, I got the interview. I did well in the first round interview. But then the second round, the final round of the interview was going to be later on, right? A week later or 2 weeks later. So this is when I was actually in New York for training with Houlihan, right? Houlihan has taken us to training in New York. During training, I got an email from Morgan Stanley, San Francisco, saying, "Hey, we want you to come fly this week to San Francisco to interview for this job." So now imagine that situation. I'm training with one bank in New York, and another bank is asking me to come interview during training to another part of the country, the other side of the country. But in these moments, when you get your opportunity, a shot at your dream job, and it's a rare opportunity, my recommendation to all of you is you got to take it, right? You got to risk it all and go for it. So I actually skipped training for a day, flew to San Francisco from New York, and then interviewed at Morgan Stanley Menlo Park. And again, I had done my preparation, and one of the things that I'm really good at is interviewing and doing these interviews and crushing them. So I knew I would crush the interview if given the chance. So I did that and flew back to New York, and I made an excuse to the firm that, hey, I was sick and couldn't show up to work the day before. But the truth was I was interviewing, right? Then a couple of days went by, and then on a Monday, Morgan Stanley called me and said, "Hey, the job is yours." So that's how I upgraded myself. Again, if you look at that journey from that no-name bank for the summer internship to Bank of Montreal offer to Houlihan Lokey to Morgan Stanley is top investment banking team. So it's never a direct line to these jobs. It takes a lot of different things, especially for people like you guys and me, which are coming from a non-target school. And you got to apply this approach across all industries. If you're going to investment banking, great. Don't just apply to RBC Capital Markets. Apply to all the small banks and the smaller ones and the even smaller ones. You don't get into that, no worries. Apply to finance-related jobs. Anything that you can while still keeping your eye on the long-term goal, which is key. Anson, do you mind turning your camera on? You're the only one without the camera on. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. So basically, that was kind of the journey to Morgan Stanley, and I worked there for 2 years then. And by the way, just to let you guys know, Morgan Stanley had rejected me twice before in my career, thing. It's not like the first time I applied, this is when I got in. I had applied to Morgan Stanley multiple times before, had interviews before, and got rejected, twice. So if a firm rejects you, let's just say RBC rejects you, don't take it to heart. It's just, it's the season, it's that moment in time, and it's not something that is, going to be forever hanging around you. So it'll take some time, and at some point, they'll accept you, maybe. But point is, you got to keep trying. So for Morgan Stanley Hong Kong, as Morgan Stanley San Francisco, I worked there 2 years. Then I joined Google, and I was there at Google in their investment arm called Capital G. And similar story, networked my way to Google, met the partners, got the job. And then I worked 2 years there. Most of my coverage was in Asia. So I was working on Asian deals in Hong Kong, China, Singapore, Korea, and finding startups to invest on Google's behalf there, which was a lot of fun. And then Morgan Stanley Hong Kong reached out and said, "Hey, we have a new role coming up in Hong Kong. If you want to move to Hong Kong, we're happy to move you here." So then I rejoined Morgan Stanley for the second time and moved to Hong Kong in 2015. So then I rose there. I was an associate there. Then I became a vice president in investment banking, covering the private equity sector in Asia. So that's been my career journey, right? From start to finish on how I broke in. Now, how you break in all the nuances and the details behind it. Obviously, there's a million lessons in there, which I mentioned in my breaking through course. But I think the ultimate core, the spine of how I broke in is grit, motivation, pushing, keep on pushing, networking, a key piece. It's a people business. You got to get in front of as many people as possible. And remember, there's only 100 spots in investment banking every year, for example, right? And there's literally like 10 million students who are going to be applying for it. So there's a big component of it is luck, right? So we can't control the luck piece. The luck piece is whatever. What we can control is stuff that's in our court. So things like your resume, let's make it amazing. Preparing for interviews and really answering questions and knowing how to answer and convincing people with how you answer, that style. Networking, making sure everybody who exists knows about you, knows about your brand, right? Knows that you are someone who is passionate and motivated. So all the things that you can do in your court, you got to do it, right? And this goes the same for if you want to do consulting. This is the same if you want to work in Facebook or Google or any of these companies. These basic principles will apply across the board. And that's, what you just need to know. But the good thing is you guys, most of you are, first year and second year students. So you have a lot of time, right? Which is good. A lot of time means you have a lot of time to cold email people. You have a lot of time to improve your resume. And you have a lot of time to, get into these industries. So that's like my journey overall, right? So hopefully that's been helpful to kind of give you guys an idea how I got to some of these places. So now let's talk about what is investment banking, right? So investment banking, and I'll use an example of a company like Apple. So we know Apple, everybody, uses Apple products and stuff, from computers to phones, whatever. Investment banks come in an interesting way wherever there's a need to raise money, right? That's one thing. So if a company needs more money to do something. So for example, Apple has a factory in China, for example, right? And they want to now move their factory to Vietnam, or they want to move it to India. Now, to do this project, Apple will need money, right? They'll need a lot of money, and they will find out where can we get that money from. So to raise money, right? Just like anybody else, just like, let's just say you have to raise money, you'll go to a bank and you'll say, can I get a loan? Similarly, companies can go to an investment bank and ask them to give them a loan or create a loan debt product for them. So one thing that investment banks do is they help a company raise money through either debt, they can get them to borrow a loan, or they can also do an IPO. So you'll hear a lot of times that a company went public, they did an IPO. That basically means a company, let's just say Apple again has 100 shares in their company, and they said, hey, we want to raise $10 million or whatever. They'll take some of the shares, let's say take 5 shares or 10 shares, and they'll sell it on the stock market, right? That's called going public. What that means is someone buys a share of that company and they give the company the money, right? So again, investment banks will come in and they'll help analyze how much should that share be worth, right? How much is the share price of that company that you should be willing to pay? So investment banks will come and help the company do that. Similarly, for example, if a company wants to buy another company, right? So right now, as you guys know, in the US, TikTok is being forced to sell its US operations, right? If that's happening, how do you figure out what's the value someone should pay for TikTok, right? So for example, Microsoft is right now in chats to buy US operations of TikTok. So some investment bank is helping Microsoft figure out how much money should they pay to TikTok China to buy TikTok USA, right? Similarly, some investment bank is helping TikTok figure out how much value should they sell for, right? So in both sides, an investment banking team is working hard day and night right now, running financial analysis, strategy, models, all that stuff to really figure out what value should we extract out of the buyer and the seller, basically. So that's the job of what investment banks do at a super, super high level, right? Helping companies with money and helping companies with acquisitions or selling pieces, but ultimately value. Now, when you think about investment banks, obviously there's a lot of other operations from trading and there's other stuff that happens, but generally speaking, that's kind of the high level of it, and that's kind of helpful for you guys to understand. Now, moving forward, let's talk about what your daily life looks like in an investment bank. So if you're going to get a job as a summer analyst or a first-year analyst in an investment bank, this is what your day usually looks like, and I'll tell you exactly what you need to know. And I know one of the questions someone asked me in the survey or on the registration was like, what skills do I need to know from an Excel perspective to be a great investment banker? So when you think about an analyst's job, this is what the day looks like. Usually you'll start the day around like 9:30, 10 in the morning, right? So you'll go to work, you'll be there. Usually analysts are some of the last people to show up to work because they usually have the longest hours. So they'll be tired, they'll come in because they've had a long night or a late night, and they'll come in around 9:30, 10 in the morning. Then when you get there, the first hour is generally email hour, right? You have a bunch of emails, probably 30, 40 emails in your inbox from all sorts of people. It could be emails from projects. It could be emails from clients. It could be emails from, your deal team, whatever. And you'll basically take the first hour and sort through some of these emails. So you'll go through, you'll see, okay, here's a project email, triage it there. Here's just a newsletter email. Let's cancel that. Let's archive that, stuff like that. Around 11 a.m., you'll then have a conversation with your associate. So associates in investment banking are basically like your managers, right? They'll basically have a conversation with you about, hey, here are the 5 to 10 things we got to do today. Here are the 2 things that are high priority, need to get done before lunch. Then here are the 4 other things that can get done after lunch, and then the day can go on. So you kind of prioritize with your associate around 11 a.m. Then what happens is, around 12:30 or 1, you'll go get lunch. So most investment banking analysts, they'll go get lunch downstairs, they'll bring it back. Usually they'll eat at their desk because there's a lot of work that needs to get done. So real work actually starts after 1 p.m., right? So after 1 p.m., basically what happens is you exactly know what you got to do. Now, what you have to do are these 3 things. In investment banking, and even in consulting, by the way, you use 3 softwares: Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, and Microsoft Word, right? That's generally speaking, 99% of your time will be spent in those 3 tools. So let's take Microsoft Word, for example. We've all used Microsoft Word to write essays and whatnot. But when you get into investment banking and consulting, you become so good at it, right? In terms of formatting, fonts, font styles, really making beautiful documents. And that's the difference between why they pay you so much, because you become so good at noticing mistakes, errors, aligning text, and really making, beautifully crafted, documents and memos. So if, let's just say you need to write a memo, which is a 10, 15 page memo on an industry. Let's say your team is working on a consumer industry, or they're, writing something about internet trends, right? It needs to look really beautiful. So that text document in Word is something that you as an analyst will be the one typing, right? So you'll spend some time doing that. Similarly, PowerPoint. So Microsoft PowerPoint, we've all used to make slides, but when you get to the world of investment banking and consulting, this goes to another level. You get so good at it because everything that we do, from in terms of presentations to decks to deal pitches, any of that stuff is built in presentation slide format. Now, these presentations are 30 to 100 pages long, right? And slides could be, for example, it could be a team page, one slide with a bunch of team members' faces. It could be a bunch of logos on a page. It could be a bunch of charts and analysis and graphs. It could be Excel tables that you've pasted in, all of that stuff. But the key thing is you got to make it look beautiful, because all the documents that are created in these industries look just gorgeous. They just look beautiful, and they look something that's called client ready, right? You got to get it in front of the clients and get them access to it. So long story short, you're spending so much time in PowerPoint, a lot of the time PowerPoint, and that's what you're going to be doing. The third piece is Microsoft Excel, right? So any of the analysis, any of the models, any of the regressions, financial analysis, any of that stuff that you do, that's all done in Excel, right? And Microsoft Excel, the way you've used it, it's a totally different beast. So I've used Microsoft Excel for the last 10 years, right? And a big part of it in investment banking. I'll tell you that I only know maybe 4% of Microsoft Excel. And I consider myself a power user of Microsoft Excel. So imagine some of the best people who know Microsoft Excel, and which I am not, right? Those people can crush it. And I'll tell you guys a story. One of the analysts who worked with me at Morgan Stanley, he was so good at Microsoft Excel that he could use Excel. Obviously, everybody uses Excel without a mouse. Nobody uses a mouse while using Excel in the world of banking. But he could use Excel and create models without looking at the screen. So he could have a conversation with you here while he's building this beautiful financial model. So there's another level of people that you'll meet in these industries which just blow you away, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe someone can actually do that. So anyways, those 3 environments, Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, is where you'll be spending a lot of money, a lot of time. And most of the stuff you'll be building are going to be these decks, these presentations, right? That's where the majority of the time is spent. So from 1 p.m. to like 6 p.m., you'll work on some presentation, some analysis. And the way it happens is they'll say it's called churning comments. So you'll get some comments from senior managing directors or associates or VPs. And these comments basically are like, hey, let's move the logo to the left. Let's change this analysis to this other analysis. Let's refresh this analysis with today's pricing and market data. So stuff like that. But even though they seem simple, each of these things can take 30 minutes to an hour to 6 hours, right? So it can always be varied. But anyways, around 6 p.m., you'll finish that one major project that needs to get done that day. And then around 6:37, this is when like all the senior people, managing directors, directors and VPs are usually leaving the office. So they'll drop a bunch of comments on your desk, right? So they'll be like, hey, Jenny, please take care of this. Hey, Jenny, please take care of this. I'm out. So what happens is by around 7 p.m., the amount of work on your desk piles up drastically because all the senior people are leaving. And when senior people are leaving, they'll leave their work, for you to do. So anyways, around 7:30, 8 p.m., you'll go to dinner, you'll grab dinner, you'll come back. And around 9 p.m., you'll come back to work and you'll start working on the comments that were left for you around 6:37. So from 9 p.m. onwards, you'll work on this. You'll probably go home and change clothes, come back in comfortable clothes and crank away, do those the numbers, analysis, models, whatever you need to do. And generally around midnight, you will send it to your associate, right? So your associate will then get the updated work that you've done. They'll check it. They'll make sure it's right. And then they'll have some minor comments. And around 1 a.m., right, you'll send it back to the managing director, right? So around 1 a.m., a lot of the analysts, dread this time because they're like, oh my God, I really hope the MD is sleeping so I don't get any comments back. But the truth is a lot of these MDs are not sleeping. So they're just waiting for your deck to show up. So around 1 a.m., you'll get, comments, and they'll be like super lengthy comments like fix this, fix that, fix this. And you're basically like, oh man, there goes my night. But truth is a lot of these comments are not that bad and it'll take you an hour, maybe 2 hours. So around 2:30, 3 in the morning, you've done the comments. You're not going to get any more comments from the MD. You basically then send the work that you've done, the deck, the presentation you've created to the print shop. So every bank has a print shop. The print shop will then print the books. Some banks, you'll have to print it, right? At late night, like when I was at Houlihan, I had to print the books. I had to bind the books and make them look like a book. Whereas at Morgan Stanley, there's a massive print, shop that you can send to, and then they'll deliver the books to your office. Anyways, around 3 in the morning, you'll have these books available. So, and then you'll write an email to the MD saying, hey, the books are ready. I've left them on your desk in your office, and I'm leaving for the day. So around 3 in the morning, you'll go home, you'll take a taxi or whatever, an Uber. You'll get home, you'll get in bed, you'll sleep. And then next day you'll wake up at 8:39 and restart, right? So yes, it seems like a lot, and it is, right? And that's why, investment bankers get paid generally more, right? It's because there's a lot of responsibility on one person. You are the person responsible for all of this work. You're the person responsible for not having any mistakes, checking all the work, double checking all the work. And you're responsible for the quality of this product, which is why these industries are hard to get into, right? There's only one spot, and some people can be like, hey, why don't they just hire 10 analysts, right? No, the reason is you want to hire one because you want to make that person so good that they are responsible for everything that's put on this page, and they know all the numbers, and that's how quality can be controlled versus adding more people into these companies, all right? So that's what a day in the life of investment banking looks like. So next up, what I'll talk to you guys about is what can you do today in terms of improving your chances. So the first thing I'll say to you guys is networking, right? That's the most important thing in getting these jobs. A lot of times people will spend extra amount of training or extra amount of resources on technical training, technical knowledge. Like, hey, let me learn Excel, right? Let me learn how to do financial analysis. Let me learn all. The truth is, it doesn't matter what you learn if you can't even get the job, okay? So you could be the best person at Microsoft Excel, but if you don't have the skill to get the job, then all that training goes to waste, right? So instead of spending your time on learning the technical side of the job, and it doesn't have to be investment banking. I mean, even management consulting, if you think about it, all these students will study cases, right? They'll prepare cases. But truth is, again, if you can't get the job, there's no point knowing how to do the job. So let's step back and do less of the technical side of things. The first thing I want you guys to do is build your brand. Now, building brand means I need you to go clean up your Facebook, your TikTok, your Snapchat, and make your LinkedIn better. Everything looks good, and you build all of that. So that's your brand. Similarly with your brand, your resume, right? Your resume needs to look amazing. It needs to look beautiful. And I'll share, I have a whole course on that I'll share with Marcus, who can then share it with you guys. So make sure right now, especially given that it's early, build a beautiful resume, right? Then fill that resume, because you have time, with not just your school, right? Right now, I know you guys are students and everybody here goes to University of Toronto, but differentiate yourself. How? Join clubs, right? Create clubs. start a small business, do all those things. When I was your age at University of Toronto, I started a photography company, right? And it was just a side business for me, but it was something that differentiated me from the rest of my peers. So do as much as you can to make that resume look so good that when someone sees it, they're like, oh my God, like this person is amazing. And that's what you should be doing. So now that you have your brand built, now you got to spread that brand, right? Get as many people to, see you and know that you exist. And the way you want to do that is by actually, networking. So reach out to people, connect with them. And that's through alumni, right? Yes, you can, search people who are currently working, who may have gone to different schools, but because you're going to University of Toronto, you need to start networking, right? And I've met so many University of Toronto students who are like, oh, Sherjan, I've already networked and I've not found anybody. And I'm like, if you had networked properly, you would have, I would have received an email from you, right? Because I'm one of the few people from University of Toronto who broke into Morgan Stanley. So if I didn't get an email, then who did you email? So your networking isn't complete unless you send me an email, because I'm one of the few. And similarly to me, there's a lot of other people that have gone to, different investment banks from University of Toronto. So your job is to find that. So get access to the alumni directory, start cold emailing people, start reaching out to them, start learning, start making mistakes, right? This is your time to make those mistakes. And remember, the worst thing that can happen with you cold emailing someone is them not replying to you, which is fine. Like that's the worst thing that can happen, right? So start emailing people as many as you can so they know. So that's what I would recommend to you as much as you can. And then have the eye on the ball, but in the long-term way. Don't be like, hey, I want Morgan Stanley or RBC next summer. It's most likely not going to happen. But make a mindset that, hey, I want to get there in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Okay? So that's one of the best things you guys can do right now, especially as sophomore. And final piece I'll mention is, as you network, right, meet as many people and learn from them. Learn from what their day-to-day life is. It may seem like, oh, investment banking is cool or consulting is cool, but it's only cool because you've only heard it from the cool resources. You've seen people wearing cool clothes and you're like, oh, that's pretty interesting. But would you enjoy it? So when you meet people, ask them about their day-to-day life. Ask them, what do they love about the job? Ask them, what do they hate about the job, right? And do that across different industries. Don't just limit yourself to investment banking. I always tell students, think of yourself as an alien who just came to planet Earth. And the first place you went to is the ice cream store, right? You go to the ice cream store, you don't know how any flavor tastes. Chocolate, vanilla, mango, green tea, you don't know, right? Your job as a student right now, in my opinion, is go try every flavor. What that means, talk to as many people from all different backgrounds, even in industries that you're not passionate. So let's say none of you want to work in accounting, for example. That doesn't mean you don't network with someone from KPMG or from PwC. Reaching out, meeting them, you never know what that leads to. Same with tech, same with startups, same with things. And you never know, you come across an interesting opportunity that might be interesting. I'll give you an example. In 2012, when I was leaving Morgan Stanley, so 2013, when I was leaving Morgan Stanley, one of the options I also had was to go join Facebook, right? But I ended up choosing Google because Facebook still was, fairly young company, and I felt like it wasn't that big of a company. But if I had joined Facebook in 2013, right, I would be a multimillionaire, right? The point is, I was like, oh no, Facebook's too small, Google's better, right? So if I had taken that conversation, I'd be at a different place. So never say no to some of these conversations. You never know where they're going to be, where they would end up, and that can help you. All right, so that's kind of the stuff that I think you guys can do. The final piece I'll mention is, and I'll let Marcus email you guys later on, is right now is the best time for you guys to learn and train on how to get into these industries. So I have a course which is called Breaking Through. All of you guys should take it. I'll send the blurb out to Marcus so you guys can take it. Take that course, learn how to interview, learn how to network, learn how to crush those interviews and be the best at interviews. And that course is going to allow you. And that course has everything I know on how to break into any of these industries. And 20,000 students have taken it. So Marcus will send out an email after this webinar. And that's something you guys can do right now and self-study so you can prepare and use that for the next couple of years. All right, so that's kind of the meat of the talk. What I'd love to do now is I'd love to get you guys involved a little bit and ask me questions that you guys have on top of mind, and I can help answer. So we have about 18 people here. So we can start with Elson. Elson, any questions? that you have for me? Anyone else? You guys can, and don't be shy, otherwise I'll pick people. This is your best chance to ask me anything. You can ask me about salaries, you can ask me about hours, you can ask me about personal life of investment banking, you can ask me, you know, difference between Hong Kong and the US in terms of investment banking. Whatever's on your mind, this is your chance.
Hi, I'm Allison,
Yeah.
and I would like to ask, what was your interview like during like your interview for Morgan Stanley? What was their interview like? Like what they ask you, and
Yeah.
were there like group questions or group activities that you had to participate in?
Good question. Yeah. So most interview processes, not just Morgan Stanley, are usually like this. You'll have a first round screening, right? So someone will call you, usually a junior person, like an analyst or an associate will call you. And on that phone call, they'll ask you some basic questions like, hey, tell me about yourself. You know, why do you want to do investment banking? You know, have you done any internships before? It's usually a 15 to 20-minute call. So that's called the first round screener, okay? And it's only with one person. Then if you pass that, then you'll have a second round interview, right? Second round usually is with a couple more people, maybe two people separately. It's not a group interview, separately. And these are 30-minute long interviews, right? Again, similar questions from people. And these questions are, again, like, you know, tell me about yourself, you know, why do you want to do investment banking, blah, blah, blah. So, and then sometimes they'll ask you some technical questions, right? Okay, you know, tell me about equity, tell me about debt. You know, how would you value a company? Very high level, right? So these are not complex interviews. Then comes, if you pass that second round, then you'll have a final round, which is called Super Day, right? So Super Day is where you'll actually fly to that city where their interview is. There's going to be a bunch of people, 15, 20, 30 people who are going to be competing for like one or two roles. And then you would have, you would have like back-to-back interviews. So for example, my Morgan Stanley interview as an analyst, I went in at like 10 in the morning and my interview process was till like 4 p.m. with no break, right? So 30-minute interviews, that's 6 hours, that's 12 interviews, right? So back-to-back, I met 12 different people. And it's usually the same thing that I'm, you know, answering for all of them, mostly, right? But you know, you're just meeting the entire team back to back to back to back. There's no group activity. There's no any of that stuff. So now, if you pass that, then they'll let you know in a day or two that, hey, you know, because they'll rank everybody at the end that, hey, we like this person, we didn't like that person. There's usually not a technical test in terms of like a physical technical test where you have to actually, use a computer. But some banks will do like a paper technical test. So they'll be like, hey, here's a 1-page technical test, you know, answer some questions. And, you know, some banks will do it, but majority of the large banks, they're not going to do that. Majority of the reason why people get hired is because people like that person. So let's say, Allison, I'm interviewing you. I'm not hiring you because you're smart, right? I'm not hiring you because you have a high GPA. I'm hiring you not because you can use Excel better, because I don't know. I'm hiring you because I think you're a good person. I think you are eager to learn. I think you have the energy to work in this industry. I can see you've done your homework. I can see your passion. And I feel like, okay, if this is going to be a person, like let's say I'm looking for an analyst, I'm like, oh, is this person going to work hard with me 18 hours of the day, right? Is she going to show up on time? Is she going to be excited when it gets tough? Is she going to complain when, for example, it's like 1 a.m. and the managing director sends us a bunch of comments? And is she going to be like, oh, FML, right? That's not the person we want. You want people who are like, let's do it. I'm game, right? So that's kind of the reason. So ultimately, which is why I mentioned it's the behavioral part of the interview process. You know, convincing someone to hire you, you know, is the hard part. And that's where majority of people need to work on their fit, their style. All right, so we have a bunch of questions in the audience. Julia, can we get your camera on, and same with Una, and I'll answer some of the questions that are in the chat. So yeah, and you guys can message me privately as well if you want to ask questions privately as well. So, so someone asked me, what outside school activities or case competitions would you suggest us to attend if you want to land a job at Morgan Stanley or some of the big banks? So look, any of those, you know, I would recommend all case competitions, right? If there's any sort of case competitions, if there's any sort of stock pitch competitions, if there's any sort of things that you can do in your school, which the school's allowing you to do it, right? This whole thing comes down to, and if you take my resume course, you'll see this whole thing comes down to differentiating yourself from your peers. everybody in this chat is at University of Toronto, like I said, right? So just saying I'm at University of Toronto with a 4.0 GPA, not good enough. So think about it this way from my angle. Let's say I'm hiring people and I get 2 resumes. I get a resume from University of Toronto with a 4.0 GPA. And then I get another resume from University of Toronto with a 3.7 GPA. But that person has done case competitions. That person's on the volleyball team. That person plays badminton. That person is a grade 8 piano level teacher. There's a lot more stuff that other person has done. That person is a better candidate and a more interesting candidate for me to hire and interact with than just one person who sat at Robarts every day and studied, right? The person's at Robarts every day, not the person we want to hire. We want to hire the person who has done a lot of cool things. So that's what I would recommend in terms of what you guys should do. And this is the best chance. You guys are sophomores and junior and freshmen. That's a lot of time on your hands. So go see as many clubs you can join and join things that you're passionate. Don't just join business clubs, join cultural clubs and take leadership roles, right? Rise up in those organizations. If you don't like a club that is currently on campus, start one. For example, is there a Bitcoin club at University of Toronto? If not, start one, right? Is there a social movement club that you are so passionate about at University of Toronto? If it doesn't exist, start one, right? So find those things that can actually help you differentiate and really push the boundaries, right? Those are the people that investment banks will be interested in talking to and consulting from the top firms, not just Morgan Stanley, but all the top firms. As an engineering background, what drew you to investment banking? So when I was in engineering, I wasn't, like I said, a particularly good engineer, but I saw people who were in investment banking, who were going to investment banking from like Rotman and, IB and some of these other places, and they just looked cooler, right? I was just like, obviously as a kid, I saw them wearing nice shoes and nice suits and fancy watches and all that stuff. And I come from an immigrant background, so I never had any of that stuff. So I was like, I want to get that stuff, right? And it felt like an industry that was just hard to get into, right? It just felt like hard to get into. And when I see challenges like that, they pursued me to do it, right? So for example, I'll give you another example. When I started this workshop series, the first time I did a workshop was in University of Toronto, and this is in 2010. And after I did the event, I said to myself, it'd be cool if one day I can teach at Harvard annually, right? Harvard would become the place to teach. And obviously that was like a 10-year goal of mine. But guess what? I took it as a challenge and made it happen in a month, right? So for me, whenever I see like something super hard to do, I kind of like give myself this motivation. And 99% of the time I fail in making that challenge happen, but that doesn't mean I don't try. So that was the reason I would say investment banking drew to me, and it just felt like a place where I can have a career, which I was more passionate about in business and all that stuff. So next question is, what virtues does investment banking teach? So I guess let me ask you, virtues means like I'll have to exact definition of virtues. Who knows the exact definition of virtues? Is it like qualities? Let me see. Define virtue. Behavior and high moral standard. Okay. I don't know if I don't know about the high moral standards or something, but I can definitely tell you about behavior. I think one of the best things investment banking teaches you, you learn how to learn quickly, right? So it's one of the fastest ways to learn things. So for example, if you want to become an expert at Excel, PowerPoint and Word and business and analyzing companies and meeting people and networking and being confident in front of a lot of people that you've never met, right? Investment banking teaches you that. Investment banking also teaches you resilience. It teaches you like, okay, you have 5 projects and you're staying up 3 a.m. every day. Here's another project, right? Oh, you're staying up till 5 a.m. every day. Here's another project. Oh, you pulled an all-nighter till 9 a.m. 2 days in a row. Here's another project. So at some point you break down. You're like, oh my God. But over time you get better and more efficient in handling a bunch of things. I remember when I was an analyst at Morgan Stanley, I would, have a bunch of projects show up, but I became really good at outsourcing. So a lot of these large investment banks have outsourcing operations where they'll have, smaller teams in India and Philippines and some of those places. Some of those places where you can actually send them something. So for example, if I got a deck to turn comments, and let's say some of the slides were easy, like, hey, put some logos on this slide, create a simple chart here, or let's align the title left versus right. So simple things like that. I would quickly mark them up scan them, and send them to India. While I would be focused on working on the Excel model, the analysis that had to be done, the deep stuff. So it becomes, you actually learn all that stuff and how to do that and how to, balance all these things. So I think those are some of the best things investment banking and consulting jobs teach you in those things. All right, so how do you accelerate your career growth into your current positions? So look, I mean, I didn't accelerate my career trajectory too much. I accelerated by a couple of years, but I don't think I would recommend against accelerating anything. Like a lot of people try to finish school early and, look, in the grand scheme of things, you're going to have a long career, right? Your university is only going to be 3 or 4 years of your life. So I would use it fully. When you get into your career, like I said, you're going to be working there 40 years. So skipping a year, what's that going to do? Not much, right? And the first 10 years of your career is all about exploration. It's all about learning and exploring. So I wouldn't try to accelerate anything. If you get lucky and someone says, hey, we'll give you an increase in title quickly, fine, take it. But don't try to pursue or chase it. What are the things you wish you knew before diving into investment banking? So I guess, I was pretty prepared what I was getting into. I knew it was going to be tough. I think the biggest lesson that I learned, or a few things that I learned, was how good some of the talent is, right? I always thought I could compete with some of the investment banking talent that I saw. But when I saw some people who were in my analyst class and my associate class and my VP class that were just so much better than me, right? And in all cases, that there was one VP in Hong Kong who had never gone to school. He had never gone to any undergrad, right? And he was an investment banking VP because at Morgan Stanley, they had this program where if you are, in the junior roles or in like a non-front office role, if you really, do well, they give 1 or 2 people globally an opportunity to choose any group so they can do like an internship. So this guy did this internship with Morgan Stanley in investment banking then, and he was so good that they kept him. So I've never seen that, and he was just really, really good. Similarly, when I was an analyst, like the guy I told you guys about who could, do Excel models without looking at his computer, when I saw him, I realized that moment that I could never be number one in that group, right? There was just another level of talent. Seeing that was pretty humbling, and you get to learn from these people. The other thing I learned about investment, didn't know, but when I got there, I found out you don't really make that much money, right? I think like now, especially with you guys, there's a lot of opportunities in joining tech companies and startups and other firms. There's a lot more opportunity. So investment banking isn't the only role available for you guys. So that's a good thing. Can you tell us about some crazy developments while working on important transactions? Crazy developments. Oh man, there's too many. But it's nothing juicy like that. But I think in investment banking, you have a lot of fun, and you have to do a lot of things which may seem different. So for example, when you are in something called a roadshow is, let's say I want to take this company public, you will take the management team of that company and you'll fly in a private jet to different parts of the world, and you will, basically you don't sleep for a week, right? But as an analyst, you're sitting right next to the CEO in that private jet, in the limousine, in the meetings, everywhere. Everywhere the CEO needs you to go, you go with him or her, right? CEO needs a coffee at 6 a.m, exactly the coffee she drinks, you get that, right? CEO needs to, eat a specific type of steak, right? You make sure that happens, right? And aligning everything from the cars to the jet to what is served in the jet and how it's served, to when we get to New York City and we sit in this conference room, who sits next to who, and then we have a lunch where clients are going to be sitting across, who sits across who, right? All of that management makes some of the deals really, really a lot of fun. So some of the best investment banking analysts are really good at that piece. So that was one of the pieces that I was good at in terms of like just managing a week-long project. And when you do that, you come back and everything in that project or in that environment for that 1 week is all about getting shit done, right? Whatever is asked, you got to get it done. Figure out, right? I don't care how you figure it out. So for example, I landed in New York and realized that, hey, we didn't have a projector in the meeting that we were going to, and we needed a projector. So I quickly messaged one of the interns. The interns ran to like the Best Buy that was across the street. We bought a projector. We didn't care how much it was, because we're like, this needs to happen. We can deal with the cost and stuff later. We bought a projector, ran back to the hotel, put it up in the conference room, and like nothing else had happened, right? So there's all of these, there's a lot of those stories that I have. I could probably sit here for 40 hours and talk about them, but like, those are just fun things. What are some technical skills that essential to excel in investment banking? Look, I think there's a company called Wall Street Prep, I think, right, which does technical training. I would highly recommend you guys check them out. And they'll, there's a bunch of Excel training. But my opinion in this is this: any sort of Excel training you can do, it's not going to help you right now to get the job, right? Because once you get the job, they'll train you, right? And no one's testing your Excel skills at the interview process. So stop spending time and money learning Excel better. It's not going to make a difference to you right now. And it's not going to help you get closer to that job. So right now, spend more time on the networking, behavioral, soft skills, the personal skills. Build that, and that's going to be a lot more of a game changer. So next question I have is, what is the biggest difference between working environments in Hong Kong and Toronto? So, so I haven't worked fully in Toronto. I've worked at RBC in Toronto for a bit, but like most of my work has been in the US, in San Francisco, and then in Hong Kong. Big difference I'll say is that, let's say for similarities, in Hong Kong, majority of the people are the same people you'll see working in San Francisco and New York, right? Everybody who's working in Hong Kong is, like they say in Hong Kong, guai right? So they're expats. And obviously there's not a lot of brown guys there, but there's a lot of white guys and, Hong Kong people just like yourself, Western educated, speak English, can speak Cantonese and Mandarin, right? And that's what you see. So in terms of people, you're not going to see a big difference. You're going to see, just people just like you see here in Toronto, same as in Hong Kong. For majority of the big banks, unless you go super, super, super local bank. In terms of the work difference, people who work in Asia, investment banking, they work a lot harder, right? A lot longer hours. There's a lot more of a hierarchy in Asia, right? Where, senior managing directors, aren't just chilling with analysts and associates. Whereas in the West, in New York, Toronto, San Francisco, there's less of a hierarchy. Like you can walk into a managing director's office and be like, hey, what are you doing for, a happy hour? Let's get some beers, right? Things like that can happen more in the West versus in the East. For me, I've always been, a proponent of like being the same person regardless of where I am. So I was always very casual with, my seniors and my juniors. But that's kind of the big difference. In terms of the Asia investment banking, you definitely get a lot more opportunity when you are junior in Asia, because you actually get to go to meetings a lot more. And that's a good thing. In the US, it's usually associates and higher that go to meetings, maybe even not associates, VPs and higher, but in Asia, definitely analysts and associates go to meetings and are in the meetings. So that'll be, I guess, the big difference in terms of how you guys should think about it. Interview processes are the same, right? You're interviewing with the same type of people, so that there's no difference there. Obviously, deals are different, industries are different. In Hong Kong, for example, all the deals are majority China deals, right? Because China is the biggest business generator in Asia. In the US, deals are mostly US based, right? So that's kind of the big difference there. So someone got a first round at RBC Capital Markets, and I'm wondering how should I prepare for it to chance to get the role. So my only recommendation to you on that is you should take my course. Everything that I know I have in that course, and that's going to help you change it. Like I said, 20,000 people have taken that course. It has 11 hours of content, which covers everything you need to know, right? So after this call, Marcus will send that around. Everybody should take that course, and you can finish it in a week, or even in a day. It's 11 hours. So, but take that, and that should answer that question for you. What might you expect later in career in investment banking, like career position wise? What might you expect later in a career in investment banking, like career position wise? So I guess I'm a little bit confused. Once you do analyst, you become an associate, then a VP, then a director, then a managing director. That's usually how it goes. The job doesn't really change much as you become super senior. The best way to kind of describe analyst, associate, VP is you guys have been to a restaurant. So in a restaurant, you have a restaurant manager, then you have a head chef, and then you have a line cook, right? Line cook is the person who's actually making the food. Head chef is the one who's organizing all the cooks, and the restaurant manager is the one who's interacting with all the customers in the restaurant, right? So in investment banking or consulting, the line cook is the analyst, right? He or she is the person who's, making the food. And then the associate is the head chef. He's or she's the person who's making sure all the analysts are doing the job properly, checking the work, tasting the food, making sure it's good. And then the VPs or higher are the managers of the restaurant. They're the ones interacting with clients and making sure stuff that's coming from the kitchen looks good and it can be presented to the thing. I'm currently looking to update my technical skills. I wonder what are some of the technical skills needed for this. So again, look, so no programming languages. Definitely, you don't need that in this industry. And then, especially in investment banking, you don't really need it. Sometimes you need, what was it called? What's the language behind Excel? It's not Visual Basic. Macros. VBA. I think it's VBA. Yeah, VBA. So sometimes people build macros, but you don't really need to, right? So, but I think like if you want to really improve your technical skills, like I said, Wall Street Prep and some of those have good technical training things that you can buy. But again, I actually think you guys should avoid technical training. When you mentioned that your colleague is exceptionally good at his job, can you elaborate more on what it is that sets him apart? So what makes, I guess the question is, what makes a better investment banker, right? So, or a better consultant. I think when I think about these industries, being able to do the job is table stakes, right? Meaning being able to analyze companies, build Excel models, PowerPoints, beautiful products, all that stuff. I think that's just table stakes. Everybody just needs to have that. I think what sets people apart is there are people who have great attitude about the job, right? No matter what hour of the day it is, what assignment they're on, how much hard, the day has become, they always have a smile on their face. Those are some of the best people. Similarly, communication skills. So in this industry, you're, always communicating back and forth with your associates and clients and VPs and all that stuff. Quick communication, thorough communication, being fast at it, that's very important. You get an email, quickly respond to that, right? That's kind of what these industries set you apart. And then I think from a technical perspective, right? Someone who has really good technical knowledge of analysis, those people set themselves apart. I was never a very technical guy, right? So for me, all the analysis I would do would usually be, standard medium level analysis. But there's some analysts and associates who can really think deeper and build models and analysis that just work at a much deeper level, right? At a much deeper analytical level. They use a lot of different sources of data and how they cut the company up and build it into, what's required. So that's kind of what, the main differentiator would be, I would say. And then just like, generally speaking, like, are you someone who gets stuff done, right? And we used to have this thing called GSD and GTS. GSD means get shit done, right? I don't care what happens, just get shit done, right? Just this is the goal of the bank, right? That's what we do. Like if something needs to happen in an hour, but now you have 10 things to happen in the same hour, let's make it happen. I don't know how you make it happen, but we make it happen. Similarly, the other one was GTS, which is get to solutions, right? There's a lot of problems you'll see, but you need to get to solutions, right? I don't care about the problems. I care about how do we solve them. So having that level of mentality is important. And that's, I think, what sets people apart. Similarly, like, quality of work, meaning how many errors do you have? No matter how good you are, you will always have mistakes in your work product, typos, wrong numbers, any of that stuff. The best analysts and associates triple check, quadruple check their work, and it makes the job of the associate and VP better because I never have to check it, right? If I'm an associate, one of my biggest jobs is to check your work, right? And if I'm getting work that's always perfect, then it makes my life easy. Anything that makes the senior's life easy makes you a good analyst, and you'll get the best assignments, you'll get the best projects, and the team will be happier to put you in front of the senior clients and the better clients, right? Like I remember when I was at Morgan Stanley, the team that was on the Facebook deal, right? Facebook was one of the biggest IPOs, back in 2012. They were the best of the best in our group. They produced some of the best quality work. That's why that team was on that, right? That analyst group was on that deal. I wasn't on it because I wasn't the best. So if you want to really be the best, you got to produce the best quality work. All right, so those are all the questions so far. Any other questions that the team has that I can help answer? Nothing else? Okay, so meanwhile, I think, look, I'll just give you guys a couple of links so you guys can go check it out. So you guys can add me on LinkedIn. You can find me. That's my name, Sherjan, right? So that's easy person to find. Then for more information on stuff, you can go to sherjan.com. There's a lot of stuff there that you guys should take a look at and use, especially if you guys are looking to upgrade your resume. So I'll give you guys a link to my resume course that you guys should use. It's a free course, and I think that's one of the things you guys can do right now in improving your brand. So if you go to that page that I just mentioned, you can then click the resume link, and I'll put the link up here as well. Let me just pull it up one second. While I'm finding this link, you guys can also type any questions you have. So here's the link to the resume course. And finally, I'll send you guys, Marcus will send you guys an email after this, but here's the course that I mentioned that you guys should take. Actually, why is that not? There you go. So that's the main course. Resume course comes from that main course. So that's the course I think you should all take. This is a paid course, but after this, I'll chat with Marcus about the discount, and then we'll send you guys a discount that you guys can use on the course. But ultimately, those are the resources. And final resources, if you guys just want coaching and stuff from me, I write an article every week on Substack, which is just like general mentorship. So if you guys are interested in that, you guys can subscribe to that as well. Cool. Any other questions, guys, that I can help answer while you guys have me here? How's it? Everybody feels good? Everybody's okay? Can I get a thumbs up? Cool. Awesome. Look, enjoy time. I love coaching students, and I hope you guys can get to where I got to and beyond. That'd be exciting to me. And one day you do, then I want you to send me a letter. I have all these thousands of letters from students who, have taken my courses and stuff. So one day I'd love for you to send me one from your RBC email address or whichever bank you get into, hopefully Morgan Stanley, which is my bank. And then I hope you guys, do great things. And if there's any questions and stuff, you can find me on Twitter. You can tweet at me. My Twitter is @Sherjan. All right. Cool, guys. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. And if there's any questions, just tweet at me, and then I'll let Marcus then send you guys emails and other links that could be helpful. All right. Take care. Thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care, guys.